What the fuck is up, everyone? Prison Meddler here, back with another reviewing and rating every album series. And as let me know, I'm reviewing Rush. Yeah, back to the classic rocks. So as let me know, the rating for 0 out of 5 being the worst, and 5 out of 5 being the best. And just so y'all know, I'm not reviewing EPs, compilation demos, or live albums, just the full-length studio albums only. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. Alright, now starting up is their debut album, which is their self-titled debut, released March 18, 1974, with 2 singles released. Fighting My Way, released August 1974, and In the Mood, released December 1974. And as we know, this is the only album with John Rutsey on drums. Then after this album, he was replaced by Neil Peart, and Neil Peart remains the drummer for the rest of the band until his death in 2020. As we know, yes, this album has pretty much of a different sound compared to the others. As we know, this album was heavily influenced by bands such as Led Zeppelin, Yes, and Cream. And it's got more of like a heavier sounding type riffs. And tons of really great songs from Rush, such as In the Mood's a great one. I do love Before and After. Take a Friend's great. Working Man is a great song. Definitely one of their best songs. Now, is this one of Rush's best albums? No. It's kind of like one of the mid to lower in my list, but I say it's still a really good album. The main reason why it's kind of lower is because I just don't think it reaches up to the qualities as their future albums, as their later 70s to early 80s albums. It doesn't go up to that type heavy quality, but it's a really good album overall. So I'm going to give this album a very strong 3.5 out of 5. Kind of lean towards a 4. So yeah, it has some great riffs. I mean, the production kind of sounded a bit raw at times, but it does sound really good. So yeah, but it's a great album, but it's nowhere near as good as their like future albums, which I will be reviewing quite shortly. Alrighty, so next up we got is Fly By Night, released February 14th, 1975, with only one single release. Fly By Night, released April 23rd, 1975. And I have to say, this is a better album than their debut album, in my opinion. This is the band's first album with Neil Peart on drums, and it's the same lineup until the rest of the band's career. So, as let me know, really great album. Definitely a classic album by Rush. This album has more of a progressive elements to it. So let's talk about. I pretty much like all the songs in this album, as you may know, with shit tons of great songs like Anthem, really great song. Best I Kept Beneath, Between Beyond, by Tor, and Snow Dog, which just has multiple sections of the song. Fly By Night's definitely one of their popular songs, and pretty much the rest of it. So yeah, I have to say this is a lot better album than their first album. Is this one of the best Rush albums? Not really, but it's a really great album, to be honest with you. Definitely one of their... I say it's pretty much one of their strongest albums. No, it may not be like a masterpiece as the other albums, but I would say this is definitely a really, really great album. So yeah, I'm going to give this album a 4 out of 5. I definitely think this is a really great album. It definitely holds up well, and I definitely think they kind of found their sound in this album. So yeah, I'm trying not to make this too long since there's 19 albums by them. Alrighty, next up we got is Chorus of Steel, released September 24th, 1975. Two singles released: Return of the Prince, released October 1975, and Lakeside Park, released November 1975. Now, personally, in my opinion, out of all the 70s albums of Rush, I'm going to be honest with you, Chorus of Steel is my least favorite Rush album in the 70s. I mean, it's not a bad album. My only complaint with this album is it just sounds very Rush. I just feel like this album needs more work, to be honest with you. This one has more like a bluesy type sound. And despite the fact that this was released, how many months? Like 7 months after Fly By Night came out. Like Fly By Night came out September 14th, 1975. Chorus of Steel came out September 24th, 1975. So that makes it 7 months, which is very short. And yeah, I mean, I just don't think this album is quite as creative as their previous album, as their last two albums. I mean, it kind of sounds sort of some sort of letdown, to be honest with you. But, I mean, again, it's not a bad album. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, I kind of find, especially the last song, The Fountain of Lameth. I mean, there's only 5 songs in this album, and The Fountain of Lameth is like almost, it's a 20-minute song with 6 sections. Is all we know. Feels like multiple songs, but in one track. So, but it does have some pretty enjoyable moments, and then there's some really stupid ass songs like I Think I'm Going Bald. To be honest, I kind of find that song kind of dumb, to be honest with you. And then Lakeside Park is another great song. I do like Lakeside Park. But other than that, as the album in general, I say it's alright. I mean, again, it's not a bad album. It's just, out of all the 70s, out of the 70s albums of Rush, this would be my least favorite. So, I would give this album a 2.5 out of 5. It's not a bad album. It's just, it's kind of a mid album for me. Definitely my least favorite Rush album in the 70s. That's for sure. Okay, next up we got is 2112. Released March 1976 with only 2 singles. Let me find it. Twilight Zone, released June 1976, and The Temple of Syrinx, released February 1977. Now, starting from this album up until Power Windows, I consider this to be the golden era of Rush, because most of their albums from that period is pretty much masterpieces. And I'm going to be honest, this is an amazing fucking album. One of my favorite rock albums in the 1970s. It's such an amazing album. This is when Rush really found their sound with this album. And that's what their previous album, which is kind of a disappointment album. I'm going to have to give some credit to Chorus of Steel, because if it kind of wasn't for that album, I mean, none of these albums would exist. Because I feel like Chorus of Steel is kind of like a failure to them. So they pretty much learned that mistake and decided to make it better. They kind of decided to make proceed to make the sound that's from Chorus of Steel, and decided to make it better by adding synthesizers and other instruments throughout the entire album. So that's pretty much how that goes. So, yeah, every song. Start the song 2112 which is a 20-minute epic track. Fucking love that song. It has 7 sections, and it's all perfect, which is basically side 1. Now, side 2, A Passage to Bangkok, is such a perfect song. I love every single fucking song in this album. Again, this is easily one of my favorite rock albums in the 70s. Without a fucking doubt. The album is just... I guess I could say this is Rush's best album. Out of the go, it's pretty hard to pick the best Rush album, since most of their albums are just so good, to be honest with you. So I just can't pick what my favorite is. It's like a constant flip-flop here, so... Yeah, this is by far a perfect album from start to finish, so I give this a 5 out of 5. This is a fucking perfect album. It's that high enough. It's definitely one of their best albums. One of the best albums I've ever heard. So yeah, definitely one of my favorite prog rock albums of all time, without a fucking doubt. Alright, next up is A Farewell to Kings. Released August 29th, 1997, with 2 singles. Closer to the Heart, which is released November 1977. And Cinderella Man, released January 1978. So, as we know, another fucking amazing record. As we know, yeah. What else to say? Really great album. I mean, this one has a slightly changed. It's got some more of their greater use of synthesizers, with each member playing more instruments than usual. Especially long tracks such as the 11th song, Xanadu. And then there are some basic songs too, which is really great. So it just became a fan favorite, like Closer to the Heart. And it's such an amazing song. Definitely an amazing song. And I love how it has this science fiction theme song called Zygus X1, which is basically, it closes off with basically a cliffhanger, which leads up to their next album, which is Hemispheres, which I will talk about really shortly. So yeah, which is a 10-minute track, and it's just an amazing one too. I just really love it. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. Again, like I mentioned, a really golden era. Neil Peart disguised to be a very difficult album to rank, which I can see why. This is such an amazing fucking record from start to finish. I don't know what else to say here. Yeah, definitely another classic album from Rush. So, I'm going to give this album a 4.5 out of 5. It's just such an amazing record from start to finish. It's got more instrumental tracks, but it sounds really good. Really great album. Really amazing album. Definitely one of their best albums of all time. So, yeah. Again, golden era. Can't explain much. Alrighty, next up we got his Hemisphere, released October 24th, 1978. With 2 singles released, Circumstances and The Trees. Both songs were released in January 1979. And yeah, amazing fucking record. As we know, it follows up from their previous album with the song Zygus X1 Book 2 Hemispheres, which is an 18-minute track, which left off as a cliffhanger, follows up right after the ending of the previous song. And yeah, definitely another great album from start to finish. I mean, yeah, even though this album only has 4 tracks, but it's still an amazing fucking record. And yeah, there's 2 shorter tracks that played mostly on the radio, especially the songs like Circumstances and The Trees, which is an amazing track. I love The Trees, definitely one of my favorite songs. And then After the Trees, it closes off with the instrumental track called La Villa Strangingo, a exercise of self-indulgence. Tons of, how do you call it, signature tracks, with their first song to be played instrumental, and holy shit, it was amazing. Really great songwriting from start to finish. Definitely complex guitar solos with fucking synthesizers, amazing bass performances by Geddy Lee, and the fucking drumming from Neil Peart. What else to say? This album never disappoints at all. So, yeah, definitely one of the best, one of my favorite Rush instrumentals of all time. So, I really can't tell. This is so hard to rate. I'm going to be honest, when I ranked albums back then, I have to say Rush is the most difficult ranking I ever done. To be honest with you. This is such an amazing album. So, yeah. I'm also giving this album a 4.5 out of 5. This is such an amazing fucking record. From start to finish, I love all songs. I pretty much love everything about this album. So yeah, definitely an amazing fucking record. Really love it how it starts off from their previous album too. It's kind of like a sequel. It's like watching a movie. Alrighty, next up we got is Permanent Waves. Released January 14th, 1980 with 2 singles released. The Spirit of Radio released February 1980 and Entre Nos released April 8, 1980. So yeah, another fucking masterpiece album. One of the best albums of 1980. This album, just like the others, it's fucking amazing. I mean, I just love how they experiment with... The album has some reggae elements, especially with the song The Spirit of Animal. No, what the hell? The Spirit of Radio. It's not The Spirit of... I don't know where the hell I got that from, but whatever. Anyway, back to it. I just love how they experience multiple genres. In the song Jacob's Ladder, I just love multiple time signatures. And the song Jacob's Ladder, I really love this interlude in the middle of the song. It kind of has this dark feel to it with the weird concept behind it. So, yeah, I just love that middle of the intersection of it. Entre Nos is a great song as well. It's one of the more basic songs, but it's still really good. I also love the final track, Natural Science, which has 3 sections, and holy shit, it ends off with the bang of the sound. Definitely one of the best Rush songs of all time. So, yeah, guys, it's just another amazing album. Definitely a masterpiece album. So, this album is also a 4.5 out of 5. This is another amazing fucking record. I'm not going to keep this too long because we have a lot more albums to review. Alright, next up we got is Moving Pictures, released February 12th, 1981, with 3 singles. Limelight, released February 1981, Vital Signs, released March 1981, and Tom Sawyer, released 1981. And definitely maybe one of the best prog albums of all time. However, unlike the previous album, this one has more of a radio-friendly sound, but I'm not saying it's bad. It's far from bad. It's amazing. It just feels like it fits well with the, it just fits well. Songs like Tom Sawyer, really amazing song. One of my favorite prog songs of all time. Then we got, the next song, Red Barchetta, another classic song. Then we got the instrumental track YYZ. Limelight's great. Camera Eye is an amazing fucking song. Every single song is just 100%. It's just perfect. So, yeah, definitely one of the best albums I've heard. I mean, yeah, this could be my favorite Rush album. I don't know. I don't know. It's pretty difficult. So, yeah, I'm going to give this album a 5 out of 5. This album is just perfect. Definitely a fucking classic album. So, again, I'm not going to go to further details, and let's go ahead and move on. Still have a lot more to do. Alright, next up we got is Signals, released September 9th, 1982, with 3 singles released. New World Man, released August 1982. Subdivisions, released October 1982. And Countdown, released April 1983. And yes, this album is a massive change from the previous albums. It has more synthesizer sounds. It's the first album to begin of their new wave era, which is it sounds really great too with their with prog rock. I just love this direction they went to. I think it's around the 80s. During music is mainly like new wave sound type music with synthesizers. As Rush is pretty big around the time, and yep, they did it well with this album with such with such an amazing record with songs like Subdivisions, which is a great way to open up the track. I just love that song. Uh, Mainly about as let me know, it's about the space, the eclipse, and all that. Countdown, which is a great way. It's about space. No, Sound Countdown is mainly about the spaceships, the first launch of the space shuttle that happened the previous year. Analog Kids, amazing. I just love all tracks. To be honest with you, every single song is just flat out amazing. I just don't really need to go into further detail here because we still have a lot more to go. This is the band's 9th album, and we have about 10 more albums to go. So, yeah. I will have to say, another amazing album. Another 4.5 out of 5 for me. This is a fucking amazing album from start to finish. So, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Alright, next up we got is Grace Under Pressure. Released April 12th, 1984, with 4 singles released. Distance, Early Warning, released April 1984. The Body Electric, released May 1984. Red Sector A, released May 1984. And After Image, released November 1984. What I have to say, another great album. I'll say this, not quite as strong as Signals, but it's still a very, very great album. It continues off with their new wave era. As let me know, with more keyboard sound, it's like they did with Signals, and it adds some more elements such as ska and reggae to the songs. As let me know, I love the songs throughout. Almost every song is just great. I think the first song has the Fear trilogy with songs like The Enemy Within. I believe that's I think there's like a Fear trilogy, and it lasted until like for a couple of albums later, let's say. And all the songs, Distant, Early Warning, after Red Sector 8 is an amazing fucking song. I definitely love that song. Every song is just flat out great. Yeah, guys. It's another great Rush album. So I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5, but a really strong one. I wouldn't say it's like amazing. It doesn't blow my mind, but I really have a lot of fun with this album. It's still a really great album from start to finish. I wouldn't argue that people would rate this higher. I wouldn't. Now, I said this before, my rating is really not meant to be accurate, just so y'all know. So, I wouldn't argue if you guys would give this like a 4.5, but for me, it's a 4 out of 5, so yeah. Alright, next up is the last album in the Golden Era, and we got his Power Windows, released October 11th, 1985, with two singles. The Big Money, released October 1985, and Mystic Rhythms, released January 1986. And yeah, this album is basically no different from their previous album, Grace Under Pressure. It's another great album. What do you expect? They put out some great, amazing bangers from start to finish. I really love the song Marathons. It's an amazing fucking track. Very catchy chorus. Big Money is an amazing song as well. I mean, what else to say? I love the synthesizers. I pretty much like almost everything on this album. Really great album from start to finish. So, yeah, I don't want to make it too explicit review on here, since we still got a lot more going. I mean, I may have to slow down a bit where we go to the albums that went downhill a bit. So, yeah, guys, just like the previous album, Grace Under Pressure, I'm also giving this album a 4 out of 5. This is a really great album. So, yeah, I really can't review much here. It's another great album. So, yeah, moving on. Alrighty, next up we got is Hold Your Fire, released September 8, 1987, with two singles released. Time Stand Still, released October 19, 1987, and Prime Mover, released April 11, 1988. And yeah, this is the album that started quite going downhill a bit. I mean, it's a great album. The only complaint I have this album is this album is a little longer than their previous albums. The previous albums, Rush albums, range from 35 to 45 minutes. This album is 50 minutes, which is a little bit longer. And this album has 10 tracks. And there's a few songs that are somewhat filler at times, but not a lot. There's still a lot of great moments in this album. Force 10 is definitely a hit banger of a song. I absolutely love the song Time Stand Still. I really enjoy it. That's such a fun song. I do love Time Stand Still. Open Secrets is good. Prime Mover is a little bit of filler. Lock and Key's great. I do like Lock and Key. Mission's another great one. And yeah, the Taishan is pretty experimental song too. So yeah, I mean, my little complaint is this album does have a little bit of filler, but not a lot. I mean, the production is still great and overall, and it's still an enjoyable album, but it's not quite as strong as their previous new wave eras of Rush, but it's still a really good album throughout the entire album. So I'm going to give this album a 3.5 out of 5. This is a really good album. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on. We still have a lot more to go. Alrighty, next up we got is Presto, released November 17th, 1989, with two singles. Show Don't Tell, released November 3rd, and The Past, released March 1990. And yeah, out of all of the 80s albums of Rush, definitely my least favorite of Rush albums in the 80s. I know some people say that this is one of Rush's worst albums. I'm going to be honest, I kind of see why, but I disagree being their worst Rush album, to being one of their worst albums. Yes, it's weak compared to their previous albums, but the album is still enjoyable for the most part. It's definitely better than most of their materials after that. So, yeah, I mean, there's still plenty of great songs. I do like Show Don't Tell. Chain Lightning's great. I love The Past. The Past is probably the best song from this album. This song, it's pretty much like a awareness. It's this. You want to know the Past is basically about teenage suicide. um, and the tendency to romanticize it. So it's kind of like a darker song. It's more like a type of awareness type song. As you may know, with this album, they pretty much leaning towards their alternative rock sound. To be honest with you, "Scars" is actually a great song. To be honest with you, so yeah, Preslow's great. I do like Anagram for Mongo. Yeah, I mean, as for the rest, I do like the song "Scars" is actually a really great song. I do love this complex drums pattern that was they used both with acoustic and electronic drums at the same time from Neil Peart, which is pretty creative. So yeah, I'll give it that. But yeah, as for the album, definitely a lot weaker than their previous album, but it's pretty enjoyable for the most part. However, I mean, there's more good in this album than there is bad in this album. And the worst thing I thought about this album is I can't take the album cover seriously. It's just buddies floating around. That's just it. I mean, I really can't take this album very serious. The album cover seriously. I guess that's probably why, but I don't judge the book by its title, you know. But other than that, the album is overall decent. I just think this is a decent album in general, so I'm going to give this album a 3 out of 5. It's a really solid album. Pretty underrated too, but I don't love it or anything. It's nowhere near their best though, but I wouldn't say it's nowhere near their worst either, so sort of a mid album, to be honest with you. Probably their most mid album. I don't know. But yeah, the album is decent overall, but definitely the weakest album by Rush in the 80s. Out of all the 80s albums, Presto is definitely the weakest. Okay, next up we got is Roll the Bones, released September 3rd, 1991, with 3 singles. Dreamline, released September 1991. Roll the Bones, released February 1992. And Ghost of a Chance, released April 1992. Oh boy. This album, I never cared for it, to be honest. This one has more of this alternative rock sound. Most of this album sounds a lot like R.E.M. for some reason. The band R.E.M. That's what this album sounds like. It sounds like R.E.M. for some reason. I'm just not a fan of this pop rockish alternative rock. I don't like this alternative rock approach that Rush is going through with this album. I'm just not a fan of that for some reason. I mean, I do like some alternative rock bands here and there, but with Rush, no, it just doesn't. It just doesn't sound good with me for some reason. But I do like the instrumental track "Where's My Thing," which is called "Gangster of Boats" trilogy, which is a pretty odd name for Rush. I do like the song "The Big Wheel." That's a pretty catchy song, and so is "Heresy," but that's about it. The rest is just really boring, generic. I find the rap part in Roll the Bones pretty cringe, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't hate it. It's kind of cringe, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, definitely one of my least favorite Rush albums. But is it Rush's worst album? No. But we will get there, though. So I'm going to give this album a 2, leaning towards a 2.5. It's just a meh album. Very mediocre. It's just not very memorable, to be honest with you. So, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Alrighty, next up we got is Counterparts, released October 19, 1993. With 2 singles, Stick It Out, released October 1993, and Nobody's Hero, released April 1994. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is actually an improvement album. Excuse me. Anyway, I do think this is a massive improvement over their last album. This album kind of has like a grunge feel to it, and I can say this is maybe Rush's heaviest album to date. Well, heaviest album of all time. I wouldn't say to date since the band is no longer around. So, yeah, I definitely think it's quite their strongest. It's not a Return to Roots album or anything like that. No, it's not that. It's just, I think it's just an improvement album for the most part. With great songs such as Animate, Stick It Out. It's a great song. I do like Nobody's Hero. This album, yeah, it kind of continues the alternative rock. This one has more like a grunge elements to it since this album came out in 1993 and around the early 90s is whenever grunge is big to the rock scene, so to the rock game, you know. Yeah, it's a lot like, it has a lot of grunge elements to it throughout, and I really pretty much enjoyed it. So, yeah, guys, I'm going to give this album a strong 3.5 out of 5, leaning towards a 4. So, yeah, I mean, it may not be a classic album or anything, but it's definitely an improvement overall. So, yeah, pretty good album. Alright. Next up we got is Test for Echo, released September 10th, 1996, with no singles released. So, yeah, this album is kind of a filler fest album. That's all I have to say here. Sounds kind of rushed. I mean, the production isn't all that good, to tell you the truth. I mean, I don't know what else to say here. Test for Echo, it's kind of a decent track. So is Driven. The rest, not quite memorable. I mean, it's just not quite a good album for the most part. It's basically, I don't know, it sounds like they're trying to sound like Radiohead or something, and to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of their alternative rock sound with Rush, so yeah, a little bit worse than Roll the Bones, not a lot, so yeah, it's just, I would have to say most of the songs in there are quite forgettable. It's not that interesting, and it's just lame, mediocre, boring ass material. Sounds like B-side tracks from previous albums, and it's just, yeah, it's not good. Not a good album. I'm gonna give this a 1.5 out of 5. It's a pretty bad album, so yeah, nothing memorable about this album, so let's go ahead and move on. Alrighty, next up we got is Vapor Trails, released May 14, 2002, with 2 singles released, One Little Victory, which was released March 29th, and Secret Touch, released July 10th. Now, in my personal opinion, guys, I think Vapor Trails is Rush's worst album, in my opinion. This album just sucks. This is the first album since Caress of Steel did not have any keyboards or synthesizers involved. And to me, it kind of sounds like they kind of went back to their self-titled debut album. They try to pretty much go back to the first Roots album, and it just, to mix it with their synthesizer sounds without any synthesizers in it, and it just sounds like absolute shit, to be honest. Second of all, the fucking loudness war. The production. It's trash. I honestly do not like a single song from this album, except for maybe One Little Victory and maybe Ghost Rider. That's just it. I mean, during that time between that and Test for Echo, Neil Peart has been through a very hard time. As some of you know, during that hiatus, he lost his daughter in 1997, and then a year later, he lost his wife, which is a pretty dark turn. And he rode around around the U.S. on a motorcycle, like the entire fucking country at that point. And where it came to the point where he almost quit the band, that he decided to retire from drumming. And then, however, back in 2000, he decided to get back with Rush and start writing some more material for the album. This is basically how this made. So, yeah, due to his psychological health and welfare that he's gone through this difficult time, from losing his wife and his daughter. So, but other than that, this album is just awful. It just does not sound good with the progressive rock without any synthesizers in it. It just sounds so plain. It's just very predictable. And I hated the fact that this is the band's longest album. It's over an hour. This album is 67 minutes. And I believe this is Rush's longest album, to be honest with you. And which makes the album just a massive bore fest. Production is so bad. The Loudness War ruins it. And yeah, I even saw some rankings that some people put this as their best album. I mean, that's them. I just hate this overall sonic production, and it's just a really bad take. And yes, there is a remix there is a remaster version that was later released in 2013 that was slightly remixed and remastered, which did improve the production, but it's not enough for me to call it a good album. So yeah, I'm also going to give this album a 1.5 out of 5. This is just a really bad album in general. I wouldn't call it a terrible album because it's kind of closer to a 1 out of 5, but it's a 1.5. Yes, I think this album is worse than Test for Echo. I think Test for Echo is mainly a 1.5 leading towards a 2. This one is a 1.5 leading towards a 1. So, yeah. I just hated production on this album. Most of the songs on there are just really not terrible to listen to. And not only that, the album is just really fucking boring. Yes, there is a remaster version, which did improve the production a bit, but it's still not enough for me to call it a good album whatsoever. So yeah, 1.5 out of 5. The album is fucking bad. Alrighty. Next up, we got is Snakes and Arrows. Released May 1st, 2007, with 3 singles released. Far Cry, released March 12th. Spindrift, released June 1st. And The Larger Bowl, released June 25th. Now, my thoughts on this album, it's alright. It's better than Test for Echo and Vapor Trails. That's for sure. A lot better. I mean, it's alright album. It's just, the album is still too long. It's over an hour. I mean, there's still plenty of great songs here and there. Like, I do like the song Far Cry. I do enjoy that. Spindrifts, and also, I do like the instrumental track that made Monkey Business as well. Faithless is good, and We Hold On, which is the last track. Mark of Them Angels is so. I do like the song Armor and Sword. I almost forgot about that one, but I mean, the production is an improvement. I'll give it that. But there are some songs I just kind of find forgettable. But as for the rest, it's just kind of filler fest, to be honest with you. But other than that, it's not a bad album. It's much better than their last 2 albums. I consider this to be a major improvement whatsoever. So, yeah. other than that, the album is kind of a so 50-50 type album. Yes, they did brought back the synthesizers that was completely absent from their previous album. They brought back the keyboards. I mean, Neil Peart is still great at drumming and all that, but the album itself, in general, it's meh. It's alright. I mean, the song Far Cry did kind of hit, and the main Monkey Business is a really great instrumental. I'm not gonna lie, so I'm gonna give this album a 2.5 out of 5. It's just a pretty so-so album. It's kind of a mid album for me, but I can say it's a lot improvement from their last two albums. Alrighty, next up is their final album, Clockwork Angels, released June 8, 2012, with 6 singles. Caravan released June 1st, 2010. Bub, or BU2B, also released June 1st, 2010. Headlong Flight released April 19th, 2012. The Wreckers released July 25th, 2012. The Anarchists released February 20th, 2013. And The Garden released April 20th, 2013. And yeah, as some of you know, this is the band's final album. Yeah, I'll have to say this. This is pretty much their Return to Roots album. Like, this is kind of like the Return to Roots from their 70s to early 80s materials, and I could say this is pretty much a massive improvement over the last album, Snakes and Arrows. Despite, yes, this is their I know the producer is Nick Raskumanis. I know who he is. I know he's known for producing metal bands. I know he produced Trivium Shogun. He also did Stone Sour albums as well, and maybe Evanescence. I know he also produced Korn albums as well. But this one, he pretty much did a good job producing this album. It did sound like a step up of old classic Rush. He pretty much did a good job producing it. I definitely consider this to pretty much, it may be like a weird comparison. This is kind of like Rush's Death Magnetic. It's like when Metallica goes back to their old school thrash metal sound. This album pretty much went back to their old school Rush's sound, old school prog rock sound, and it's pretty much enjoyable in this part. But is it as strong as their classic albums? No, not even close. I mean, the album, I still think the album is still too long for the most part, and there's still plenty of filler songs here and there. But as for the songs like Caravan, really great song. I do like the song Bub, or BU2B. Halo Effect's great. I love Clockwork Angels. The Anarchist is great. And I also love the final track, The Garden, which is pretty much a conclusion to Rush, to be honest with you. But other than that, I definitely think this is a very solid final album. So I'm going to give this album a 3 out of 5. I definitely think this is a very solid way to close the band's career, since this is the final album by Rush. Its final materials from Neil Peart, as he died in 2020. And yeah, I just find a way to be a really solid conclusion to the band Rush. So yeah, I definitely think this is a very decent album overall. So yeah. Alrighty guys, so that is my review and rate for every Rush albums. And yes guys, I decided to do a more classic rock band instead of like mainstream modern metal bands. So yeah guys, hope you enjoy it. And yes, I know this video is too long, but I tried my best not to make it long, but if it's like an hour or so, oh well, it's what it is. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoy it, and I'm gonna go ahead and get the fuck out of here. So I'm out.